Hello, welcome back to Python tutorials. And now let's move towards global variables. So what are global variables? So it's like when you declare a variable and you want to see where I can use that variable. So it's literally called like what is the scope of that particular variable. So in this session we will be we will be using a technique that is called like functions, and which is basically a one that is having a particular functionality of some multiple properties. Let's say we want to write a function that would be like printing a table of a number. Okay, so let's say if I'm just declaring a variable and x equals to awesome, and I just want to use that variable inside this function. So just don't worry about the function for now. It's just a basic syntax, like we have to write this def before defining a function, then we have to write a name of the function. Here it's like my function, and then after the empty braces and the ratio sign with the indentation, and we have talked about it, like Python is really serious about indentation, and indentation normally means like if you want to make something a part of the other thing. So we want to make this particular functionality as a part of this function, so we are just printing here, print Python is x. Okay, so initially when we'll be using this function and we just want to access this x variable, and which is like declared outside the function, and we want to access it right here. So if we want to print the result, so we can just simply call the name of the function with this empty brackets, and we'll get whatever isn't inside the function. Okay, so initially with that problem, when you try to run it, so we'll be getting like Python is, and then x is carrying the value awesome. But let's say if we want to use that function, if we want to use that variable, and we want to change a little bit of that variable thing inside that function, then how would we be using that thing? So once again, x equals to awesome, inside that function we are just changing the value of x equals to fantastic. Okay, and then now we are printing it, the value, and similarly we just have to call the name of the function. So at this line the output would be like Python, and we'll be getting this value fantastic. This would be the thing that would be printed on the screen, okay, for now. But if I'm just writing this line, and that is basically like outside the function, which like understood because we don't have any indentation included here. So Python, print Python is x. So if we want to print this value, what we get is Python is awesome. And the reason is that the value that we changed inside the function was having a scope only, which can be only used inside this function. Okay, so only inside this part. And when I'm just printing anything that is outside the scope of that function, and that's how my variable value would only be changed inside this function. And if I'm just accessing that value outside the function, then it would automatically be the default value. Okay, so how can I do, like how can I change that particular value, and whenever I'm accessing this value, so I want the new value. So for that purpose, what we'll be using is, when we have like x equals to awesome, okay, and now I'm accessing that particular x value and calling it as a global x. So if I'm writing this global x, that means that I'm accessing a value that was previously written, and now I'm just accessing that value. And now if I'm changing this thing, actually means that I am changing the main global value. And if the global value is changed, then if I'm accessing the value outside the function, then automatically what I would get as output of this statement would be Python is fantastic. Let's just try to practice this thing. So the complete program was declaring a variable, writing a function. Inside that function, if you want to use the value that was outside of that function, just write global to it. Now you can change that value, and now whenever you are trying to call that value would basically be the one that was changed inside that function also. So we have defined a scope of the variable that it can be accessed globally. So the global value was changed basically. So let's just try to practice this. First link, and then as I have my email account logged in, so won't have to do that again. I just simply have to locate what file I was working on, and that was the file Introduction to Python. And inside that file I've just added some cells, but we'll try to do that with our own hands too. So we declare a value variable x with initializing it with a 5 value, then change that value inside it, and now when we are calling that function, we are having the value that is x, because that was a part that was inside the function. Okay, and now if I'm just printing the value x, because I haven't used the global thing, so I'm just getting the value that was previously assigned to it, which was 5. But if I write global and now calling the function, I mean, like, let me just connect that drive and to in order to run this thing. Okay, and I have to click on this thing to connect. It will take like a couple of seconds. And now if I'm just running it, so now if I'm running this value, that would be like, let me just define another value. So initially x was initialized with, let's just say 50. Okay, and that was like outside the function. Inside that function we use global x and then change that value to 10. Now if I'm like calling the function, if I'm just like calling the function, and let me just print a statement inside this, so I have to check the indentation too. So you guys have to really sure about the indentation thing too. So I'm writing like print, and then in using this quotation signs of value of x, and then space using comma, because we have learned this thing in the previous lesson. So writing the value of x, so I'm running this thing. It won't be showing me anything because I have to call the function name, that is like my function too. So value of x is 5. Okay, now outside that function, if I'm just printing the value of x to see if the value is 50 or 10, so let's see. So the value is 10 because we access the global value of x. Okay, and I guess so far so good. Let's see what we have in our exercise sessions too, and we'll talk about it. Now it's our time to have our exercise part. I mean, like, how will be so this exercise will be pretty big one, because we have been covering quite a lot of things and we have to revise all of them. So yeah, it won't take like more than 10 minutes, so I just try to make that like super simple. Okay, so let's test it now. Okay, so the first question is, create a variable named car name and assign the value Volvo to it. Okay, so you know how to create a variable. There should be something written here and here. You have to make sure like what would be the variable name, place, and what would be the initialization value. Okay, so create a variable x and assign 50 to it. So you have to write like both of the answers right here. Display the sum 5. Oh, let me just zoom that thing again. Okay, so display the sum of 5 plus 10 using two variables. So y is like having a value 10. We have to declare another variable, and they have said like you have to declare the variable x, and what value should be assigned. You should be taking care of that thing. And then if I want to print the sum of those values, so what should be written inside this thing to print the sum. Okay, now let's move toward create a variable called z, assign x plus y to it, and display the result. Okay, so x is declared, y is declared. We have to create a variable x that would be containing the sum, and then you have to display the result. I mean, like the result of the sum. So what should be written inside this thing? You have to be you have to take care of that thing. Okay, so the fifth part is remove the illegal characters in the variable name. So this is the value initialized to a variable this. Okay, so we have kind of like learned what are the correct ways of creating a variable, what are the incorrect ways. Okay, so you have to make sure like can a number be included in the first, can we use this sign, and also this part. Okay, so I'm just trying, let me just remove that thing. So you have to make sure like how would you be making that variable name as a correct one. Okay, how you can do that. And then moving to the sixth question, so insert a correct syntax to assign the same value to all of the three variables. So we have been learning about like multiple value assignments. Okay, multiple value, you have to make sure like what should be written either inside of these things to create all of those variables equal to a single value. Okay, a single string. Okay, so the seventh last part is insert the correct keyword to make the variable x belong to the global scope. Okay, so what should be written before this x, okay, to make it as a global scope so you can access it like outside the function. Okay, and don't worry about the function thing, we'll be learning about functions in detail later also. So that's all in this class, and we'll be meeting in the next class. Bye.